Hello and welcome to another episode of James Chats, with the show where I, James, sit down and chat with a friend. It's pretty self-explanatory. Today, I have none other than James Graessle. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Thank you for having me.
So, for anyone watching who maybe doesn't know who you are, why don't you give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do?
I am James Graessle, as you said. I am the host and dungeon master for the DnDnD podcast.
Awesome. Yes. And for anyone who is new to the show, basically, I have a couple questions of my own, and I have some Twitter questions from you, the viewer. So, you want to just jump into this thing?
Let's do it.
Okay, so now you mentioned that you are the host and dungeon master of the DnDnD podcast, and I just kind of wanted to learn more about that. Like, what was it like? How did you get the idea for it? What has the process been making it? Just tell us a little more about the podcast.
Sure. I really just wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons with my friends. It's kind of as simple as that. When the 5th edition of the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons came out a few years ago, I got the books and started playing with a couple friends of mine. Friends of the show, James, Janice, and Chelsea Rebecca. And we played a little bit with another friend of ours, and then everybody got busy. And I just wanted to keep playing. I love playing this collaborative storytelling experience. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to get them to play if it wasn't for something.
Yeah.
So it's a long form kind of improvised storytelling, essentially, format. So I thought it would work great as a podcast. I needed a hook so it wasn't just us playing Dungeons & Dragons. So I decided to add another D, make it Dinner and Dungeons & Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a dinner party role-playing podcast. So I have 5 funny friends over for a dinner party. I make a dish each session, serve it to them, and we play D&D. And that's the show. We recorded all of what we're calling Season 1 over the last little over a year now, and just started releasing a month ago. So we've got another 25 or so episodes still coming in this first season, and then we're going to start recording Season 2.
And it is hilarious. Okay, there's just such a great team dynamic that works there, and I think that's what's important with any D&D game, is having that dynamic.
Yeah, I think it's really important that everybody at the table is on the same page as far as what you want out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And for us on the show, everybody's there to have a good time. We have this kind of mantra on the show, do what's fun.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody is kind of following that thread and wants to do what's fun and have a good time, tell this story, but make wacky decisions and really push the limits of the kind of funnier aspects of the game. So yeah, I think it's very important everyone at the table is kind of on the same page.
Do what's fun. You know what is fun? Listen to the podcast. Do it. There will be a link in the description down below. DnDnD pod, everywhere where you listen to podcasts.
Yes.
Definitely check it out. Highly recommend. I just started playing.
Yeah.
He was a dungeon master for my first game, and I'm hooked. I'm hooked. So if you've been thinking about it, just go for it. Just go for it. Now, in Dungeons & Dragons, it's all sort of in your head.
Yes.
And there are classes, and there are races, and there are so many different things that you can be within the game.
Yeah.
Now, if you were actually living in this realm, in this universe, what would your class and race be?
Well, there's this extensive online quiz you can find if you search like what Dungeons & Dragons character I should be. On Google, you'll find this quiz that's like 180 questions. It's this crazy quiz. And whenever I take that, it always ends up telling me I should be a human ranger, which is pretty standard. I mean, like, I say that, I like being outside. I don't really like big crowds. It gives, it's an Aragorn type. But personally, really, when I think about it, I've always been drawn to druids. Druids are like a nature spellcaster class. And I really love the idea of magic that's connected to nature, and who doesn't want to like turn into a bear or an eagle or something? You can get those powers when you're a higher level druid, and I've always been drawn to druids. When I write games, I usually include druids, and I think that's what I would be. Race is tricky because what jumps to mind quick is just like human or elf, like the basic ones, but there's also a race called Dragonborn where you're like half dragon or part dragon, and you get kind of some dragon abilities, and I think that it'd be cool to be just a little bit dragon. Not like full, not like half, or like where you look like a lizard creature, but like just a little bit of dragon, where like you have some scales, or like
1/16.
Yeah,
dragon.
right, exactly. Enough, yeah, just enough where people know, but it's subtle. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, see, I don't really have a particularly strong reasoning behind this, but I'd probably go with the dwarf. I love dwarves. I love Lord of the Rings, and particularly the dwarves in Lord of the Rings. I've just always been drawn to them. So yeah, good old mountain dwarf. I'll live in the mountains.
You played a great dwarf when we played.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm playing a dwarf in the game that we're playing right now. So before we get to these Twitter questions, I do have a gift for you for being on the show. So here's the gift. So go ahead and open that up.
Oh, this is so cool. Oh, hey. Oh, this is super cool.
So that is a little treasure chest that you can keep your dice in, because when you play Dungeons & Dragons, you have a lot of dice. And that should be able to perfectly accommodate one full set.
This is super awesome, yeah. I'm gonna throw a couple in right now.
Now, I got this on Amazon. It was like 15 bucks, so it's really affordable, and it's metal, and it looks sturdy. And
yeah, no, this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
How cool.
I will be leaving a link to that in the description down below. It is an affiliate link, so if you decide to pick one up and you use that link, it does support the channel, which I always appreciate.
You should do it. I'm gonna tell everybody in my game to get one, because they always lose their dice.
All right, so you want to jump into these Twitter questions?
Let's do it.
All right. First question we have coming from EPW. How did you get into D&D?
I had friends who were Boy Scouts when I was a kid, and they had older brothers and older guys in the troop who would play D&D on camping trips, because it's something that you don't need electricity for. Mm-hmm. It's something that entertaining, takes a lot of time, fills the night. It would be awesome around a campfire in the woods. Like, that setting would be super cool to kind of play D&D in. So they kind of introduced me to it outside of their troop. And when I first started learning, it was just before the 3rd edition of the game came out, and I was still trying to learn 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I think is the version that they play on Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. And the rules are nuts, and it was impossible to find the rule books for it, because they had been like out of print for years, because they're from like the late 80s or early 90s. And but then 3rd edition came out, and it was much easier to learn. The rules were a lot simpler, and I was able to just go to a bookstore. And bookstores were things where you could go to a store and buy books for our younger viewers. So I was like 12, 13, 3rd edition came out, and we started playing. And we played a lot. For a very short amount of time, we played a ton. We played like a full campaign from level 1 to level 20, where we were like traveling to different planes and fighting gods, and like it got really insane. We played a campaign with like no magic, where the new world, no magic, and it was like island hopping. It was a lot more like ships and pirates and stuff. Mm-hmm. But then life kind of happened. Like high school, everybody was in sports, and it took a lot of time, and relationships started happening and stuff, and then college. And I tried to play a little bit in college, but it didn't stick with anybody that I played with. So it wasn't until just in the last couple of years that I kind of got back into it, and now with the podcast. So, but yeah, it was all because of some Boy Scouts being bored on camping trips.
That's the best way to start a hobby, really, is out of sheer boredom.
Out of sheer boredom, absolutely. Got to fill your time. Idle hands.
Idle hands. Trevor asks, do you prefer pre-made adventures, or are you more of a world builder?
I am personally more of a world builder. The world on the show is all original. Nothing against pre-made adventures. I've just never played one. There are some really cool sounding ones. There's one called Curse of Strahd that's like a vampire story that sounds really interesting. There is one that comes with the Dungeons & Dragons starter set, which you can go and buy on Amazon for like 25 bucks or 30 bucks or something, that has everything you need to start a game. It has a basic version of the rules, it's character sheets, it has a set of dice, and it has this pre-made adventure called, I think, Lost Mines of Phandelver or something like that. And that takes you from level 1 to level 5, and that's a pre-made adventure. So if you've never played before and are interested in playing, pick up the starter set and just use that. You don't have to create your own world. You don't have to build out a map, intricate map and everything. You can just get this one box, open the box, and go. And it's super cool. But personally, I've never run a pre-made game. I probably will eventually just to see what it's like out of curiosity, but I come from a creative background. I study creative writing and screenwriting. I want to personally be in control of my own story, so I build my own worlds. And the world that we played actually is the same world as the podcast.
Yeah.
It just takes place in a different part of the world.
Adjacent. So. My game that I'm playing is
Yeah.
adjacent to.
Yes.
So that's exciting.
Yeah. One of our other players caught one of the city names in the description that I sent. So it's exciting to kind of have this main world kind of now that I have that I really love exploring.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Moving on to the final question, we have Charles asking, what is the process you and your wife go through when deciding the main dishes for the dinner part of DnDnD?
Yes, the dinner part. So each session, not each episode, because the sessions, as you know now, run a long time.
Yeah.
So we get a few episodes out of each session, but each session I cook a dish for my players, and we have a couple of interesting restrictions within our group. We have a couple of vegetarians, and we have some dietary restrictions. So as a cooking enthusiast, it's great to kind of have to push myself to cook good vegetarian dishes and cook with, without using some ingredients that I usually like to lean on. Like I can't use too much garlic or, certain beans and stuff like that because it's not good for one of our players. So I will look up some recipes, look up some ideas. Usually I start really broad with like a certain type of food, Italian or Asian or whatever, and talk to my wife, who has a great palate and whose opinion I really trust, about what sounds good. And then she'll be like, don't do that. That's or that's too complicated, or you don't have time to make bread bowls. I still make bread bowls. And then she'll say, no, that's a good idea, do that. And she's done a couple things for us. She did a couple weeks ago on the podcast, the episode came out where she made a smoked mac and cheese, and oh my god, it's so good. It's so good, but it's so rich and decadent that we can only have it like once a year. So we had it last year when we recorded, and then we had it just recently again. But so she's involved in that part, and then she's kind of like the maitre d' to my chef when the players come over. I'm never ready on time, and she kind of runs the front of the house as I finish cooking and gets everybody seated and ready to go. So yeah, she's integral to the show, even though she's not on the show.
Well, it's a great show, and I highly recommend all of you check it out. There will be links in the description. Where can they find you if they want to find you?
I'm on Twitter at James Graessle, and at DnDnD Pod on Twitter, and DnDnD Pod on Instagram. You can email us at dnddpod@gmail.com. Search DnDnD on the podcast provider of your choice.
So many D&Ds just happened.
It's a lot of Ds. It's a lot of Ds. I often have to re-record the announcements because I either add too many or miss one. So that's where you can find us. But yeah, iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify, we're on all of those.
Awesome. And if you want to follow my show and submit questions for future episodes, or just to see what's going on, follow at JamesChats on both Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you.
Yes, I loved it.
Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you all in the next episode. Do what's fun.
Do what's fun.